Hello buddy, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are on the Red Desert playing as the force of the Lizardmen against the force of the High Elves. And for this matchup I wanted to try something a little different from what in my experience has kind of almost become the meta, and that is, of course, spamming solar engines. Solar engines are pretty potent against most High Elf units. Of course, Dragon Princes and Phoenixes exempted from that, but they are pretty effective against everything else, all the infantry and that sort of thing. And so you see a lot of them. And I didn't really want to just spam solar engines, so we're going to be trying out a bit of a Feral Dread Saurian build and see what we can do. So going over the build here, of course we are going to be rocking a Slaanesh Mage Priest of Life, and the reason for that is, well, because if you're going to bring a Feral Dread Saurian, which I wanted as my centerpiece unit to kind of bully other big units, destroy cavalry, destroy infantry formations, and just soak a lot of damage if my opponent tried any sneaky shenanigans with a techless net and fire breath or something like that, this guy can soak it pretty well. But if I want to support him, I really do need that regrowth. So we've got a Slaanesh Mage Priest for that. I also did bring Flesh to Stone, because in my opinion, this might seem like a weird choice, but in my opinion, one of the big threats to a Dread Saurian, and really to a single entity build like this, is that your opponent drops a Plague of Rust on you. It has become a lot more popular with High Elves, and your armor's non-existent, and a horde of trashy archers mow you down. So I didn't want that happening, so I did bring Flesh to Stone instead of Shield of Thorns. Shield of Thorns also doesn't work well if your opponent brings Valerial. Very popular lore choice as well in this matchup. So once again, kind of trying to think about what we might see, and to counteract non-AP units, like for example Dragon Princes or Archers, then you'll get more benefit from Flesh to Stone, and you also don't get as much benefit from Shield of Thorns, because one, you're doing AP damage, and two, your opponent is potentially doing magic damage. If they brought Larry and she's got her AoE aura. Besides that, we do have two Star Scarvets. Now these bad boys are both mounted on Feral Cold Ones, or I shouldn't say Feral Cold Ones, they're mounted on Cold Ones. Now they're pretty decent melee combatant, certainly not up to snuff with, say, a High Elf Noble, but still pretty good. And they do get Foe Seeker, so they're pretty nippy and can get in and out of combat pretty easily. They do, of course, have a fairly small hitbox, which I was hoping would help protect them if my opponent tried to goon them out. And in case we do have a big cavalry fight, they'll provide excellent support to some of this cavalry here. And we've actually brought 2 units of Cold One Riders. Once again, a bit of an off-meta pick, but they are quite a bit cheaper than Cold One Spear Riders. And they're almost as good against large, and actually a little bit better against infantry targets, which you will see quite a bit of. So I figured, let's bring 2 of these guys. They can provide a bit of a sort of support unit for the sort of Scarvets and the Feral Dread Saurian, who can be doing the main amount of hurt to single entities like dragons or nobles or Alariel or that sort of thing. Besides that, front line is composed of 2 Star Warriors as well as the Star Chamber Guardians. Star Chamber Guardians, great anchor against the High Elves. Magic damage bypasses the physical resist. They provide Guardian aura, so if your opponent didn't bring magic damage, it can help protect your heroes and characters a little bit better. Finally, we've got some Skin Cohorts on the flanks, just providing some support. And those Javelins, this poison can be nifty. You can help snare down a dragon or help weaken your opponents. And in close quarters, they'll just bog your opponent down and waste their time, which is nice. But they're pretty quick, so they can get into archers easily. For my opponent, he has gone with the Techless Fire Magic combo, and as we can see here, we've got Techless, or I shouldn't use Fire Magic, but Techless Fire Weapon build, because he does have, of course, his Kindle Flame, as well as Shield of Sapphire on his procs, and of course he's got Net, so even though Techless is on a horse, he can net a target down, make them more vulnerable with Kindle Flame, and then a unit like Talons of Torqueletta can hit him with the Fire debuff as well, the Flammable, which is another 22% weakness, providing 44% weakness to fire attacks. And then a Star Dragon or the Sisters of Avalorn can just melt their face off with concentrated fire damage. Besides that, he does have Enfeebling Foe to weaken single targets, or Regrowth to support the Star Dragon, of course. And then he does have his items. So, of course, the Sword Techless, which is now a sort of infinite magic, especially with Great Arcane Conduit. Boundfire Convocation, which can melt my infantry. And then Potion of Koroi to heal himself and make himself difficult to snipe. Frontline for my opponent is a mixed bag of Spearmen as well as Sylvan Guard. Sylvan Guard, despite their nerfs, are still a pretty potent combat force. They will be a big nuisance for the Star Chamber Guardians if they take that fight, because, of course, that magic resist will make them a lot beefier than one would expect. And Saurus, without crazy good armor, will take quite a bit of beating there. There's also some Sister of Avalorn in there, and the Talons of Torqueletta, as mentioned before, just do some damage. And then we do have 2 units of Silverhelms with shields on the flanks to harass backlines, provide some high mass, stopping power, and that sort of thing. So, as you can see here, net does go down the Feral Dread Saurian. I got a little overzealous there, allowed my opponent to get too close, and we are going to get breathed down. And as you can see, the dragon there does some insane amounts of damage. Between the Sisters and the dragon, I've already lost about 4,000 HP on a Dread Saurian. If this was a Stegodon, or even a Carnosaur, now yes, some of the breath attacks might miss, but you would be probably looking at over half your health gone. So in fact, Feral Saurian's raw HP pool here is actually helping it soak quite a bit of damage. Fortunately not enough, and it is going to rampage here and it's just getting destroyed. So definitely not an ideal situation, but we are pushing forward with our infantry. At this point, I should have probably been a little more cautious, but I decided to just push forward with the Feral Saurian and realize I really need to commit. I allowed my opponent to get that cheap damage in. I got to push in, got to engage fast. And you can see here the Cold One's trying to shoot the gap here in between the spears. I should have tried to narrow their formation down to help them fit in. We're trying to get in on the Talons of Torqueletta over there. While at the same time, the Stars are getting their engagements up. Now, I'm not entirely sure how the trade goes with Silver and Guard, but I imagine it does not go super well just because of the reasonable armor and rather high melee defense of the Silverins against the pretty bad melee attack of Saurus. But probably not an ideal situation, but we got to try. Fiery Convocation here going down on the Star Chamber Guardians, and that's going to be a bit of a problem because I don't dodge. So big misplay there on my part. I should have pulled these guys back and avoided that fire. Maybe beat the Silverins in. But Talons of Torqueletta in the meantime getting nailed by the very angry Cold One Riders, though my opponent is able to net them down. It is using up Winds of Magic that he can't use elsewhere. Unfortunately, the Feral Saurian here does a rout before I'm able to save it. You can see the Saurus here trying to protect it. I did actually drop a Flesh to Stone there to protect against the Silver Helms and non-AP damage. And fortunately, Skinks are able to kind of pour in, plug the gap, and block this guy. Over here, in the meantime, Saurus Scarvets are diving in on Teclis and trying to shut this bad boy down. Teclis, of course, running for dear life as a banishment goes down on those Sisters of Avalorn. Unfortunately, Saurus Scarvets are not quite that fast, and they're not able to keep up with Teclis, so they're going to turn around and engage the Star Dragon. Obviously, Star Dragon does hit like an absolute truck, and it's quite the threat, but with two of them smacking away at it, it's not going to have the best of times. You can see this regrowth, though, going down, just making crazy buff. So even without Inflaming Foe, it's dumpstering my poor Star Scarvets. I should have gotten a Cold-Blooded off here to prevent this guy from terror routing, but at least he does have Foe Seeker, so he's able to amble away pretty effectively. While in the meantime, the Salon Mage Priest just pushes right through and is going after the Sister of Avalorn. I realize I need to do something to shut these ladies down. I can't just let them fire into melee or it's going to be a disaster. So that's what we're trying to do here. And honestly, some of the archer fire from the Talons of Torqueletta is probably doing more friendly fire here to the Sisters than it is to the damage to the Salon, so that's definitely good. Anytime Star Scarvet continues chipping away at the Star Dragon, forcing him to take off, though a net once again forces him to stay in place and lets the dragon get away, and that's really annoying. Breath attack is going to go down here. You can see, despite the small figure size, we are going to lose about 2,000 HP. So just insane stuff. Really, absolutely hate that combo. But what can you do? Chunked our poor Star Scarvet, and he's almost a goner. In the meantime, over here, our Blood Statue of Spite is melting away at these Silver and Guard. Now, obviously not ideal because they have magic resist, but it will whittle down a fairly high value infantry unit. For those who don't know, Blood Statue of Spite is kind of like a bound Melkoth's Miasma type damage ability. It's not bad, or a mini Buna. Aura of Quetzal, of course, also can help your troops stay in the fight, and I do believe I forgot to mention those. But Cold-Blooded here, helping my troops stay in the fight. The Star Scarvet over here just shatters completely, is run off the field, so definitely fortunate for my opponent, or really unfortunate for me. But we are pressuring Teclis pretty hard here, our other Star Scarvet, as well as the Cold Ones, just pushing through and doing their very best to shut this bad boy down, because he is just such a nuisance. And of course, Teclis with 78 speed is too fast for me to catch normally. We've only got 84, well, he's 84 speed with Foe Seeker, but without Foe Seeker, we don't have that much. And so that's really, really annoying. Really frustrates me. In the meantime, though, the Feral Dreadsaurian here is chunking the Silver and Guard and forces a break finally. And that is starting to put my opponent's position into sort of a more precarious light, because the line is breaking. The Star Dragon here, alongside the Star Warriors, with help from Shield of Old Ones and the Aura of Quetzal, is breaking the Silver and Guard. Over here, my opponent is still mucked up, and a Banishment actually damaged these guys quite badly. And so the Skin Cohort here is mucking up these spears, and the Silver Helms just wasting their time alongside the Colon spears. And although archers are raining death and destruction on the Feral Dreadsaurian, it's now able to get a smashing blow in on the Star Dragon. That 750 weapon strength rocks. And we are getting it a regrowth in. It's fresh now. Minty freshness, of course, restores that melee attack, and suddenly the Star Dragon finds himself in a very, very precarious position. HP tanking down to 600 and just buckles there, down to 130, but regrowth is going down, and of course, true to form, it squeaks away, because God forbid it not get away. So 130 HP, this bad boy does get away, and the Feral Dreadsaurian is broken under Withering Fire. Only 900 HP left, which, yeah, I say only, and it's still quite a bit. Banishment over here does a bit of damage, though certainly not as much as I would have hoped. I actually thought I already cast that, but I had not. It does, however, do a little bit to these Spearmen and the Silver Helms, so that's definitely nifty. Before petering out into nothingness, does get a little bit of an arc, the back arc there as well. Unfortunately, the Star Scarvet here just getting dumpstered and torn apart by the Talons of Torqueletta. The Star Chamber Guardians trading tit for tat with the Spearmen over here. And hopefully they should win this. They do have decent enough combat stats where I imagine Spearmen will not win, especially with Blood Statue whittling them down. Unfortunately, though, the Feral Dreadsaurian is in full flight, and despite my best efforts, he has not come back yet. And as you can see, the Salon Mage Priest now in a grim position, getting peppered from all sides. Of course, that missile resist is good, but with fire resistance being dropped by those Talons, it does mean he's going to be more vulnerable to the Sisters' fire, and the Sisters are doing work. The Saurus over here do breach the line and push through. The Saurus Scarvet, my opponent finally does slip up. The Saurus Scarvet pops Foe Seeker and gets in on Teclis, knocking him down to a weakling 30 HP and running him off. So that is definitely a big win. Bit of a whiffed breath attack there on the Salon Mage Priest. Still does a significant amount of damage, and things are definitely looking grim. Now, granted, the balance of power still says 50-50. All of my single entities, however, are in very, very bad shape, while this Star Dragon is still in rather good condition given the situation. 1400. We do also stuff quite a few spears. We've got the Towns of Torqueletta, who, keep in mind, do have martial mastery, so they're decent melee combatants. And things could definitely look a bit bad here. Now, the Salon Mage Priest does get dove upon by that very annoying Star Dragon. I do try to protect him, popping shield of the old ones, getting that extra leadership and trying to beef my troops up, but we do die before I could get a regrowth off on the Dreadsaurian, and the Dreadsaurian shatters. So disaster strikes. The Dreadsaurian on 1000 HP, shattering. So not ideal in the slightest. Teclis, in the meantime, here getting pursued by the Saurus Scarvet, being pushed this way and that as he tries to escape a very angry dinosaur, but he finally does get lanced down, and the Scarvet does skedaddle away. The Star Dragon hot on his tail, looking for that kill. He's already up to 3 chevrons. Just his breath attacks have done insane damage, and the Saurus Scarvet doing his best here to squeak away after that cheeky kill. That said, the fact that the Star Dragon is out here means he's not over here, and my opponent is slowly but surely getting torn apart by the massive infantry we still have. Look at the balance of power. We've got 336 troops on the field to 250 for the High Elves, and our troops are still much better. Saurus Warriors against beaten up Silverin like this, and Spearmen especially, will do well. Temple Guard, of course, Star Chamber Guardians could probably mop up all of this infantry by themselves. So things are not looking as peachy keen for my opponent as he would hope, and of course with the Star Dragon out of position, it's a problem. As you can see, there are some troops rallying in the distance. Some of these skink cores with javelins coming back into the fray, though with their low speed, they won't be able to make it. Saurus Scarvet pops Cold-Blooded to keep himself in the fight, and Foe Seeker trying to push back in. But the dragon is coming back, soaring over the ridge there, looming dreadfully over these last heroes of the Lizard Empire, and he is coming in to feast on the corpses, and he dives in, the Star Dragon just smashing down to the Saurus Warriors, looking to get that quick rout. Saurus do have solid leadership, but not when their lord's gone, not when they're already torn to shreds. The Star Dragon causes an immediate tear out, and they are going to be forced to flee. Keep in mind, Star Chamber Guardians don't have immunity psychology either, so if a lot of units here start routing, things will be very, very grim. Fortunately, the Star Dragon has no more healing left for himself because, of course, Teclis is very dead. And we do get a little bit of a charge in here, trying to get in there with the Saurus Scarvet, get a bit of a damage on the Star Dragon, but we get chunked too quickly and go down. So now it is up to the infantry, the PBI, the foot troops, to win this fight. They are slugging out the Sisters of Avalon and the Spearmen here. More Spearmen pouring in from the flank. My opponent trying to get that surround and do as much as he can. While over here, the Towns of Torqueletta get run down by skink cohorts. In comes the Star Dragon, the last charge. You can see balance of power very heavily in my favor. It rampages the Saurus. Rampage, of course, does buff these guys' stats a little bit nowadays. They do get an extra 16% charge bonus, an extra 8 melee attack, which does matter against the high stats of Star Dragon. The Dragon is getting a little bogged down. There's a lot of Saurus here. There's a lot of Temple Guard surrounding him. Javelins flying in. Those venomous darts just piling into the Star Dragon. We still had ammo left over, and so I was looking to net this guy down, prevent him from escaping the infantry. Speed down to 60, which means it's even lower on the ground. Star Dragon's chopped to bits, and it is a Pyrrhic victory for the Lizardmen. So a really bloody battle that saw all my single entities crushed by, well, that brutal combo of Teclis and a dragon. It's one of those really annoying things you got to prepare for, and I'm not sure this build was the best prepared for it. I do think, obviously, the missile resist Saurus Spears might be a better idea, the Legion of Chaka, but unfortunately, it's kind of difficult to prepare for that sort of specific snipage, and it was definitely a bit frustrating. The Feral Dreadsaurian, you guys saw, took about 4,000 damage in just the passage of about 10 seconds between the Dragon and the Sisters. It's really brutal stuff you got to watch out for. Unfortunately, there's only so much you can do there. It's just an annoying combo to deal with, is all it is. Looking over the build here, though, I was pretty satisfied with most of these units' performances. The Dreadsaurian kind of failed, but it was a bit of a distraction. Carnifex had definitely soaked up a lot of damage and survived quite well. I probably could have brought 2 Feral Carnosaurs instead, just kind of shaved down these King Cores, maybe cut some cut some fat somewhere in this build and made room for 2 Feral Carnosaurs or something instead. Maybe that would have been a better idea. But it was interesting to see the Dreadsaurian, and it did do some damage to Teclis, it did do some damage to the Star Dragon, and of course focused my opponent's damage on it, while other more valuable units did more work, but still didn't really do that great. Part of it also came down to my overextension early on. I just let it take a lot of damage before it should have. Skinkhorse did an excellent job pitting the dragon in, and of course stalling for time. The Saurus ended up being the win condition. It's not every day you see a horde of infantry become the win condition. But the fact that my opponent's build was really built around this cheese meant he didn't really have great answers to quickly melt infantry. Besides Teclis with Fiery Convocation, and just hoping to tear out everything at the end with the dragon. And because we were able to endure long enough, we did enough damage to the dragon, and we did kill off Teclis. He just didn't have the tools at the end to deal with this mob of infantry that remained, and they did good work. Same with the Cold One Riders. They really managed to bog down the Silver Helms on one flank, managed to compromise the archers, waste my opponent's time and effort there. Help the Slon Matrice get some good banishments off. And of course, Charged Scarvets just did really well. Keep in mind, these guys only 1,080 apiece with just Foe Seeker and a Cold One. So the fact that they mostly took on a Star Dragon, the fact that they kept Teclis on the run the whole game and interfered in the backline was actually quite a significant achievement, even if they only got 5 kills. So good work there. Just a bit let down by the Dreadsaurian. For my opponent here, for Password Invalid, just a really brutal and disgusting build to play against. Obviously, just the combo of Sisters and Teclis and the Star Dragon is just very, very difficult to counter. I do think this build wouldn't actually hold up as well against the conventional Solar Engine build, and that's probably why people bring it. Because, well, with the Solar Engine build, you could snipe out all this infantry and the cavalry, and the Star Dragon's not going to kill Bastiladon in one go, so it would probably be a better choice, to be quite honest. But, you know, we wanted to try something different, and we made it work. But definitely, I don't think this is a bad build. I just do think it would be more vulnerable to some of the more meta builds you see from Lizards. But regardless, well played to Password here. Hopefully you guys did enjoy the video. As usual, leave your thoughts, opinions, comments, and critiques down below. I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. I do thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.